We are down to the terrific three. Who will be the last man standing?
Luke Thomas, great to get together with you under the auspices of freedom right here. And big news in the world of MMA to kick off 2021. Bellator MMA exclusive home on Showtime. You know what that means, right?
We're going to start with the 145ers here today. They've got a tournament to finish, and we've got to talk about it, do we not?
Yeah, look, this is a big change in the game and the landscape of mixed martial arts, and it comes at a good time. The conclusion of the 145-pound, 16-man featherweight World Grand Prix. It's all going to start April 2nd on Showtime. Bellator 255. The great Patricio Pitbull defending his 145-pound title in a rematch with Emmanuel Sanchez. This is a semifinal bout. I am fired up.
And, of course, on the other side of the bracket, it's already completed. McKee, who has fought the entirety of his career under the Bellator banner, has grown up under the Bellator banner. Either way, he's already in the finals. Is it going to be Sanchez? Is it going to be Pitbull? The matches mean different things depending on the permutations. So we should probably get into what all the different players are doing, how they got here, yada, 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 as they say on the other side of that water.
I can drink to that, Luke, as well. All right.
Salud.
So look, this tournament kicked off. It was an ambitious one, an aggressive one. You can make the case, like you can at light heavyweight, that really the best 145-pound fighters in the world are inside of this Bellator MMA roster. 16-man tournament. And what would you say when it kicked off? What were the names you were sort of looking at that had the best chance to sort of survive and advance and get to this point?
That was the interesting part. Like, featherweight is a great weight class generally, no matter where you go, right? Because you get guys who have big power, they've got good cardio. They're not so small that, as I mentioned, the power doesn't carry over. You can still get a lot from that. You still get a lot of good scrambles, a lot of good wrestling, and there is some good jiu-jitsu, some back-taking from there. You get real complete physical athletes. You get real complete skill sets. In terms of that division itself, right, the actual players who were in there, you know, it's funny. I had my eye on a lot of different guys. I had my eye on Adam Boric. I had my eye on, obviously, McKee. You knew you had to watch out for what he was doing. And, of course, who could forget about the champ, Patricio Pitbull. When he put him in there, you knew it was going to be kind of special. But I didn't quite know how some of the other matchups were going to shake out. Were guys who were previously good going to fizzle? We know that the tournament is usually places where underdogs go to deliver some uncomfortable news to tournament favorites. But in the end, it's not, I have to say, you would agree with me, right? It's not really surprising that the last three we have remaining are Sanchez, are Pitbull, and McKee. That actually makes a lot of sense.
You got to think for Scott Coker and Bellator MMA, it played out as best case scenario in the end, with the cream certainly rising to the top here, but you never know what you have coming in. And I love what the Bellator tournament foundation is all about. There's no advantage to being the champion. You have to defend that belt each step along the way, all killer, no filler, one top contender after another, survive and advance, all those cliches there. And that's exactly what Patricio Pitbull did to get to this point, knowing everyone's gunning for the title. And remember, when this 16-man tournament kicked off, little cool wrinkle in the Bellator plans, there was a draw, there was a chance to pick either your opponent or the date you wanted to be on, gave a little bit of control to the fighters. But you still have to face the best, and that's where we got to this point. I love in a tournament how you never know which guy is going to be the unsung hero that rises up that you didn't expect coming in. You have to feel like it's McKee right now at this moment. Had a lot of potential coming in. Did you expect him to run off 3 wins in such dominant fashion in the way you did?
Listen, beating Georgi Karakhanyan is hard to do. Just straight away, it's hard to do. Then to do it in a matter of basically seconds.
8 seconds.
Right, is just pretty close to unheard of. And then you watch him, because he had good wins before that. The Pat Curran win was a big win for McKee. You're like, okay, he can beat people in this division who have done some of the most impressive work in that organization's divisional history. So you're like, okay, that's pretty impressive. Then he goes and does that, and then he goes and takes on a very tough customer in Derek Campos, right? And you thought, okay, this is a great test for him. And he did get pushed a little bit, but he showed not merely resilience, BC, but real creativity, a presence of mind. You know, Steph Curry just decided to take a 3 from a million miles away. You're like, that's not smart, but he knows he can make it from that range. He knows he can do those kinds of things. Listen, I'm not here to say McKee has done what Steph Curry has done comparatively. I'm really pointing out some people have the presence of mind in otherwise challenging situations to still put on their best kind of a game. You got a little taste of that, I think is what I would say, for McKee. And then in his last fight, dude, What do you want to say about that? I thought Darian Caldwell, you asking about names we're paying attention to? How do you not pay attention to the Wolfpack's finest? And he goes out there, and I thought, you know, he got past Adam Boric, okay. But then he goes out there and just gets, what do you want to say, run over?
Here we go!
Well, maybe you should say it, because didn't you name this unique submission that he put out on the table?
We interviewed him, right, on the sort of the big day when Bellator and Showtime had announced it. I told him this. He didn't seem to think it was true, but really it is true. You can go back and trace it. He hit him with what I was calling on Fight Night, BC, the McKee team.
I got to take credit for it. I got to take credit for it.
Boy, here we go.
This is true. The guy, if you go back and listen in the press conference after your last fight when you beat Darian Caldwell, which, by the way, was tremendous.
Spectacular.
It was unbelievable. The guy who asked you about what it was called, he was like, what about the McKee team? Okay, that was, I said it on Twitter, and the guy, if you go back and listen, he referenced my name in the question. So all I have to say to AJ McKee is, you're welcome, McKee team.
Thank you.
Yeah. Give him his flowers all day.
Which is essentially called the 1% or the 1%er. And he switched up a little bit. There are some other things he did to make it work. But in short, you know, you just control the person's spine, and then you crank it. And the way he had done it with the bicep grip was somewhat unusual. And so I called it the McKee team. And so he not only was out there talking about presence of mind, you know, he's got creativity, he's got youth, he's got swag, he's got verve, and then he just has this real mind for when to apply these techniques and how to do them, and they have, so far, tremendous success.
His game is artistic. It's improvisational. You know what I mean? Where you never know what's going to happen. And he showed that in 2 of those 3 wins and doing it in such quick fashion, a combined under 90 seconds for 2 big wins to advance. But what a career in a short period of time for AJ McKee. Just 25 years old. Maybe the Curry family reference works, right? The son of an accomplished martial artist and Antonio McKee. But really figuring out how great he can be at a time where Bellator MMA is really working hard to establish homegrown prospects. Guys that have started within the organization, have risen up, have made a big name for themselves. Who's done more under the Bellator banner, save for some of these pillar faces, right? The Patricio Pitbulls, the Michael Chandler. Who's done more in a short period of time than AJ McKee? 17-0, all under the Bellator banner, ripping off records left and right for submission, for consecutive wins, yet still, despite how impressive this run has been, hasn't had that mountaintop, I am really as elite as I appear to be moment. Boy, is he going to have that chance entering the finals. So you like that this was a guy in McKee who had potential to sort of be this dark horse guy who can go on this run, and he's done exactly that. He's lived completely up to the potential. It's been impressive to see, and we've seen that in the past in these type of tournaments. Showtime's got a history of it too. You remember the Super 6 Boxing Classic? Andre Ward was a guy who wasn't heavily favored, was unbeaten. Man went on a huge run to win that tournament. You remember, of course, the Strikeforce World Grand Prix heavyweight tournament that aired on Showtime. Did we expect Daniel Cormier to come out of nowhere and win that? He wasn't even part of the original pairings. We were thinking Fedor and Overeem at that point. And then you even look at what Bellator recently did with that heavyweight World Grand Prix. There were a lot of celebrity names in there, but you had a workmanlike guy like Ryan Bader, who's also going to be in this light heavyweight draw that we're going to get into. This is a guy who you weren't labeling maybe as the tournament favorite, but was consistent, which is what you need to be in these brackets, and just went out and really elevated a second chapter to his career from it. So from that standpoint, McKee has been maybe the most impressive during this entire run.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, McKee, even if he loses in the finals, which I'm not making a prediction about one way or the other, but let's just say he loses for the sake of argument, he would still already be proof of concept for what Bellator is doing. Sign from the top down, yes, but build from the bottom up. No one is a greater exemplar of what it means for Scott Coker's philosophy to build from the ground up than AJ McKee. And now if he wins the tournament, I don't know what else you want to say. How many places, how many organizations can you go to in mixed martial arts, get your pro debut there, stay there for the entirety, get close to 20 fights, and then by the time you capture that belt in that organization, you have at least something of a credible claim to say you're the best in that weight class anywhere. What organization can you go to and do that? It's almost none. It's very unheard of. Most organizations are for a certain time in your career, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to say that Bellator could, just take everyone from their pro debut and make them champions down the line. AJ McKee is special for a reason. I just mean to say there's a real ability of Bellator in a situation like an AJ McKee to be kind of nimble. We can get him early, we can nurture him to the middle, and we can watch him get to and help develop him to the point where when he's ready for those championship fights, we can put him in there. And that's going to be true for him, whether it's Emmanuel Sanchez or whether it's Pitbull, because as we know, the belt moves through the tournament. So whoever AJ McKee faces on that night for the finals, that other person's going to be wearing that belt.
AJ McKee will most likely be the most interested observer April 2nd, Bellator 255, when the Bellator MMA on Showtime era kicks off and begins. What was cool about talking to AJ McKee when all of this was announced and we got to sit down with him is, I don't know where his ceiling is. You don't know where it is. He doesn't know. And that's what's scary. And that's what is certainly intriguing as we head into this final. But we can't get to the final, Luke, without looking at those pair of semifinalists who will meet on April 2nd. The champion, Pitbull.
Patricio Pitbull.
One half of the hard-hitting great Brazilian brothers. And we can be honest and say one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world. The face of the franchise when it comes to Bellator MMA, the company record for most wins, really the company record for a lot of things, Luke. What do you remember most about his journey to get to this through the tournament and whether you've seen him stay at that highest level each step?
I've seen him tested. You know, everyone watches what he did in, let's say, his last fight, right, in the featherweight Grand Prix. He goes there and fights a very ready Pedro Carvalho, but there was just such a gap between them that obviously somebody as special and as talented as Patricio Pitbull is going to cruise right past him, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it may have been Carvalho's time there, though. That's what you're finding in this tournament. There is no easy outs. There was a case to be made that was Carvalho's moment to show how great he was.
Yeah, but Pitbull wasn't having any of that. I mean, you know as well as I do, like, once he got going, he got going.
That's the third time that he has been hit. You can see
And he put him away. I mean, one of the things that makes Pitbull so impressive is that for a little guy, so to speak, he has huge power in that weight class. We saw it carry up to the next one and beating, obviously, the former champion there, Michael Chandler. So something to keep in mind. But the thing that stands out for me is I've actually seen him tested. You know, those series he had with Daniel Strauss, they were tooth and nail, back and forth. You had to show a ton of ability and heart and cardio and late fight perseverance to get through those. I saw him tested when he fought Daniel Weichel. Dude, Weichel was putting it on him. Weichel is nobody's pushover, but he just, dude, what do champions do in MMA, right? They find ways to win. You go back to Fedor getting hit by Kazuyuki Fujita. No one saw this coming, but he found a way to hang on. But my point is, you can listen to Rampage Jackson in that time when he was commentating, he goes, that's a champion. That's what champions do. So yes, is it true that a guy like Pitbull has a win over Emmanuel Sanchez? Yes. Does he have a vicious win coming into this position? Yes. Is he the champion in 2 weight classes? Yes. But the key detail is not what his upper bound limit might be. We've seen it's pretty high, BC. It's that his floor is also very high. He gets pushed and still finds ways to win. It's hard to catch that guy making a mistake.
And if you're going to be a 2-division champion, a face of the franchise, a pound-for-pound great, all these...
Let's just say it, too. That's the best fighter in Bellator history.
Without question. So if you're going to be that, you need to have a completely well-rounded game, which he has. Nobody dominates him on the ground. He can go 5 hard rounds if you show a great chin against him, and maybe you're just looking to survive. He can go the distance. He's not going to get tired. And oh, by the way, Luke, and you know, he showed this side of him when we sat down and talked with him. Is there a bigger badass in the sport of mixed martial arts at the moment?
We want to kill someone in the ring.
Is there somebody who believes in their power more? Somebody who's saying, you like me as a 2-division champion? How about I go down to bantamweight one day and become a 3-division champion? He's threatening a lot of things.
135,
you can make 135?
and 150.
Yeah, I think so.
So wait, could
I
you...
had beat the Archuleta.
So obviously the business at hand here is 145, but in terms of a guy who walks around with a big stick with that big right hand, tells you it's coming, is ready and willing to use it. The well-rounded game is fun, but what puts the asses in the seats is, you know, this guy can knock out anybody who stands up in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the most versatile fighters. I mean, if you just look at his skill set, he's got a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously, he can wrestle pretty well. He's got huge power, blah, blah, blah. We could go on about it. But it's not just the versatility within the game itself. It's how versatile it is across weight classes. He's small enough, as you mentioned, to at least be an intriguing idea at 135 pounds. And we've seen him up at 155, beating Michael Chandler. In another case, he was beating Benson Henderson until he suffered an injury. He was actually performing super well in that fight. So you've seen a guy who can just kind of do it all in terms of the skills no matter the fight, and then has just got the right kind of size and the right kind of attributes to allow him to go up when he wants to, and maybe we'll see you go down. But first, He's got to get through a surging Emmanuel Sanchez on April 2nd. And by the way, we've been talking about AJ, we've been talking about Pitbull. A guy like Emmanuel Sanchez, very much I won't call him the dark horse, BC, but maybe not the tournament's favorite, but maybe he should have been.
Emmanuel Sanchez.
30 years old, Emmanuel Sanchez, improved so steadily, but the only loss in a long stretch in terms of his mature elite level of his career and the evolutions he has made has come in that title fight when he did step up against the great Patricio Pitbull in Tel Aviv. And what did we find, Luke? Maybe the hardest title defense in Patricio's reign up to this point. It went 5 rounds. You could argue that it was 2-2 entering the final round. Emmanuel Sanchez stepped up and hurt Pitbull early, and then in that 5th round, when credit to Patricio for putting the pace on, for going after it, for cementing that victory, which was really 3 rounds to 2 on pretty much every scorecard, you saw Emmanuel Sanchez take the best shots Patricio had, and he was still standing, and he went the distance. Now, is that just a moral victory, or did you see something in that fight where 3 rounds to 2 seems to be the most correct scorecard, that not only is Emmanuel Sanchez getting better, but the wins he's put together in this tournament could have him as a sneaky live dog when they rematch on April 2nd.
Listen, the one thing about being the king is you've got a huge target on your back, and not only that, Patricio Pitbull has been around for a while. He's not only 33, I think, years old, but he's been doing this for quite some time. Why do I bring this up? There's a lot of tape on him. There's a lot of tape on him. And if you're Emmanuel Sanchez, who has a guy who could go the distance, but didn't quite have finishing polish, which now you're seeing him get, by the way, I would actually argue while you are facing an uphill climb, just because, hey, it's never going to be easy to beat Patricio Freire, you do have the option, I think, more so than Pitbull, of making some adjustments. Pitbull has some things he can work on, but I actually feel like Emmanuel Sanchez has a lot of things he could. The last fight was, what, 2018? So let's say roughly 3 years in between. Has a lot more things he could do to make up that ground. Really, I don't want to say that Patricio Pitbull's back is against the wall. I think that might be exaggerating it a little bit. But I do think the thing I'm looking out for is go back and watch the first fight. What were the lessons that Emmanuel Sanchez took? He had a few more he could take and then turn on its head to then make an advantage. It makes the second fight, for me, significantly more intriguing.
And look, there's mental stress on the champion in a tournament structure like this. Every fight's going to be a 5-round fight. Every fight, you're going to get the best of your opponent coming at you. We expect no differently in this semifinal matchup on April 2nd. But when I look at the tape of Emmanuel Sanchez and watch his growth, just that one loss to Pitbull during that stretch, he redeemed the loss to Daniel Weichel, which was a close decision many years ago. And in the fight before this, to get him into the semifinals, he went out there and he looked impressive. What I'm seeing from Sanchez is a guy, we know generically a come-forward guy, but there's nothing generic about who he's evolving to be. He's picking his spots. He's maybe taking a little bit off that fastball and figuring out how to come in better with angles, figuring out how to generate a better balance of his stamina. And he has the confidence. And that's the key. How many times do you see it in a sport like the NFL, Luke, where it's not the team with the glossiest record, it's the team who's the hottest when the playoff starts, that can be 10-6, but make all the way that run to the Super Bowl? This feels like that kind of run for Emmanuel Sanchez because of the belief he has in himself. Again, he's taken Pitbull's best shot. He's still standing. That means something when you're going in there against a fighter as great as Pitbull.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be the best fighter ever. He just has to be the better fighter on that night. And he got pretty close 3 years ago when he wasn't nearly as good as he is now. You mentioned some of the improvements that he's made. Again, Duke Rufus-trained guy for I think the entirety of his pro career, pretty close to it. Really grown up again, under a guy who I think knows how to nurture fighters from raw material to polished product. But in the case of Sanchez, I think you're totally right. What I mean to say is, yes, he's picking his shots better. I think that's totally true. But he before the offense he was kind of getting off, there was a lot of volume to it, but it kind of lacked a little bit of pop.
Panache, if you will.
And a lot of times it was in situations that were kind of 50-50. What I'm noticing him more now is picking his spots. Yes, that's key. Setting traps, finding angles to land so that we're not exchanging on a 50-50 basis, BC. We're exchanging where it's on my terms or it's on your terms. And what that's leading to is much better damage, much better rounds, getting better finishes, but even getting much closer to finishes, even when he couldn't quite get it. The difference between the first and second Weichel fights is enormous. Daniel Weichel didn't get worse. He got better, too. It's just that one guy got way better, and I think you saw that on that night, which leads me to believe, as I mentioned, between the adjustments, between his natural growth, dude, it's very, very wrong to think that Emmanuel Sanchez is out of this fight. Super wrong.
Wow, and if you get an upset victory like that, you beat one of the best in the world as Pitbull, you become the Bellator featherweight champion. Only that would just get you to the finals against a waiting, unbeaten AJ McKee. So no shortage of stakes in this one, no shortage of large hills to climb.
Let me ask you, BC, let me ask you, how big of a difference are you going to get between McKee and Pitbull versus McKee and Sanchez?
Not much, if we're really being honest. I mean, if you're putting those three fighters in front of you and you say, who are the two most talented? Well, I'll say, look, I've seen Pitbull's tapes, man. This guy's super impressive. McKee, I have no idea how great he is. Sanchez may be the more workman-like pedestrian, but there's nothing pedestrian about who he's become as a fighter in terms of that pace that we talked about, the aggression, the mindset. Will that be enough? I'm not sure, but I think if you're Patricio Pitbull, you have to realize that, you know, this guy's already gone the distance with me. This guy's already been in the deep waters and survived. Does he have enough to come over the top? Do I have enough to be as strong as I've been consistently up to this point? A lot of layers to this fight, and that's what you get a lot of times in rematches is some of the mental part of it that you don't see on the surface, but is on the inside, thinking, can I stop this guy? I mean, how many people have stood up to Pitbull's power and not made it out of the first few minutes?
And I really think it's going to be interesting if Pitbull goes through to the finals and then McKee gets a win over him. I mean, you want to talk about coordinations. You want to talk about journeys. You want to talk about, again, Bellator's ability to accommodate someone at the various stages of their career. That would be just to beat Patricio would be a big deal. So if Sanchez gets it done, I'll certainly give that a plenty of appreciation. But if he ends up making it to the finals and then McKee gets a win and he gets a win via stoppage, how do you stop that guy? I mean, you're talking about a guy who'd be, you know, I'm at a bit of a loss for words here, to be quite honest, because I'm thinking about what he would be able to say about his place in the pantheon of great MMA 145ers currently fighting around the world. He would have a legitimate claim against any of them.
Well, Luke, I can't wait to find out how this tournament ends. That semifinal matchup, Patricio Pitbull versus Emmanuel Sanchez, Part 2, April 2nd, Bellator 255, only on Showtime. I know I'll be inside the Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut.
I will be there as well. And, you know, listen, the tournament got a little bit delayed because of all the things happening in the world, but we're now getting to its apex, its climax. I really can't wait to see what happens. Showtime, April 2nd. I will see you there.